Welcome back to Educated Kids Learning Session. We have been talking about the improvement in the social skill of the child. And in this series, we have been discussing about the attention problem or overactiveness of the child. And in the series, today we'll be discussing about the fifth component under this attention problem, and this particular thing deals with when the child disobeys various rules that is set up for the child to follow and ensure that the social skill is well established in the child. Rules are very integral part of our social life, and if those rules are not being understood properly and if those rules are not followed properly, then the child may have further issues in managing life in a very meaningful way in the future. So we'll be talking about why does the child not able to follow the rules and what we need to do as preschool stakeholders to ensure that our child manages social life quite effectively. Now, first and foremost thing for all the teachers and parents is to understand and identify when the child is breaking the rules and how to identify if the child is not following the rules that is set as a standard of our social life. Number one is very important, that when the child doesn't pay attention when something is spoken. So rules are basically two ways it can be communicated to the child. Number one, by demonstrating through self. As teachers and parents, we need to demonstrate a particular thing so that child can see it, child can watch it, so that child will start following them. Number two, when the child understands and synthesizes various vocabulary things, various language, then it can be spoken in the language in which the child is comfortable with. So most of the time when child grows up and have some mastery on the vocabulary part, then we as parents and teachers try to communicate through this vocabulary and tell the child what to be done. But to ensure that child understands and child knows what is being spoken, child needs to give attention to it. And if that attention span and the attention skill is not developed well, then it will lead to not understanding, not providing attention to a particular thing which is being spoken to the child. So when that happens, then whether it's a rule or something else, then child will not put a head towards that. And if the child is not paying attention, doesn't matter what is that thing is spoken, then child is not listening it, that child will not understand it. So first and foremost thing, we have to keep an eye to know if the child is paying attention to us when we speak something. Second is that child is rigid when reminded with a particular rule. Rules are basically good for it to be followed. And sometimes child forgets. And when child disobeys a particular rule at a particular point of time, and when the parents or teachers try to remind that particular rule, then child becomes very rigid not to obey it. So that is another sign and symptom we must keep it in mind to understand child is trying to disobey a particular rule. Third one is child looks confused when we talk a particular rule to a child or try to demonstrate a particular rule to a child. This means that child is unable to understand whatever we are trying to communicate. It could be a listening problem. So whenever child looks confused when something is being spoken, then we must realize one thing, that child is unable to understand. Either there is a listening issue or the child is not able to comprehend what is being spoken to. So in that case, child is definitely going to disobey the rule because child doesn't understand that particular thing, what is being spoken. Then fourth thing is that child talks about other child when disobeys this rule. This is very, very important for all of us to keep it in mind, because the child in the preschool years are likely to get influenced by the peers. So in a school environment or in the social individual environment, when the child is getting exposed to other children, and if another child is not obeying a particular rule, then more likely a particular child is getting carried away and behave the similar way the way other child is behaving. So in that case, if the child talks about any other children or refers to any other child, then we must keep it in mind and understand that the child is getting influenced by another child. Because of that, the child is not able to obey a particular rule, whatever is being said as a part of the social skill. So if this force situation prevails, then we keep it in mind that we need to work with our child to ensure such problematic behavior doesn't stay for a longer time with our child. So for that purpose, we have to manage so that the child falls back into the track and follows all the rules and regulations which have been put to be followed. And as a part of a strategy, first and foremost thing to do is that to ensure that child understand the rule properly. So whatever we speak to our child, we get it rechecked just to ask what did the child understand after listening to this. So this is a very common strategy. This is a very common practice that we as teachers in preschools used to follow. After telling something, we check it back from the child if the child understands those things. So that is very, very important to follow. Number one. Number two, what we need to do as a part of our skill development plans in our curricular things, if you have remembered, then one thing we are very, very particular about, that is the breaking of a particular long sentence into small sentences which involves specific stepwise instructions. We may speak in a very long sentence which has got multiple instructions inside the sentence. Because we are adults and we are used to give instructions in a multiple ways, and one sentence which carries multiple instructions, but sometimes it is difficult for the child to comprehend things and decode all the instructions are involved in that particular statement. So if that sentence is long and we are telling this sentence to our child, and it is bound to happen that child may be having some issues and difficulties in comprehending this sentence and decoding all the instructions. So in that case, we as parents and teachers must ensure that we speak to our child very, very specific. If we mean something, then we have to make that statement as a single step instructions. So strategy is very simple. If one statement carries 3 or 4 instructions together, we have to break this statement into 4 statements. Make it simple and specific and speak that rule in 4 statements rather than speaking that in one statement. And this is a very, very powerful tool. And if we can make a habit of speaking to our child in very specific and short sentence, then child's grasping power will be very strong, child's understanding will be very good, and therefore obeying that particular instructions is bound to be good. Then third thing what we need to do as a strategy is that to ensure that the different stakeholders speak the rule in the same way. Sometimes it is really difficult for the child to synthesize all the instructions, all the information is being told to the child in multiple way by multiple stakeholders. Here stakeholders could be the parents, stakeholders could be the teachers, stakeholders could be the person who is staying nearby our house, including our neighbors. Stakeholders could be the relatives, guests who are coming to our house. So in all the situation, if we know that child has to behave in a particular way or child has to follow a particular rule, then the same thing is being spoken to the child in multiple ways by multiple people. Sometimes a particular rule is being said to the child in different ways and sometimes in a contradictory way. This happens basically in a family when there is inconsistency between the parents. If father is telling something, mother is telling something, and there is an inconsistency, then child gets confused and child takes advantage of the situation and child will not obey a particular rule. Sometimes it happens if teacher says something, child follows that, and in home, if parents say something little bit of contradicting to what teachers have already communicated, then child will get confused there. And in that case, child may be doing the right thing, whatever is told by the parents, and child will be doing the right thing, whatever is being said by the teachers. Since the contradicting things are happening between the instructions given by both stakeholders, then child gets confused. And to one stakeholders, it will be looking like the child is not obeying the rule. And for other stakeholders, it will be looking like the child is not obeying the rule. So to make sure, it is very important to have a regular dialogue with the class teacher. It is very important that class teacher and parents must have very frequent discussion about child's growth. That's why we at Advivarate Kids make it a point that every month at least there is one time discussion between parents and teacher regarding all the developmental milestones that is there to be tracked, and parents and teacher must be in the same place as far as the child's skill development is concerned. Then finally, stop giving attention to a child when the child is breaking the rules or child is not following the rules. Generally, children in the age group of 2 to 6 or 7 years, they are attention seekers by default. So if somebody is providing attention to them for anything, child will be doing the same thing again and again just to seek the attention. It's not that intention of the child to do things in a wrong way. Since attention is being given by doing that particular thing or by not obeying that particular thing, then child will tend to do that again and again repetitively. So the best way to break that is to completely neglect the child, and all the attention should be seized at that point of time when the child is breaking the rule or child is disobeying the rule. So when the attention is taken care of, when the attention is completely stopped, child will not do that same thing again. Then when the child is doing the right thing, if the attention will be given at that point of time, the rule will be followed again and child will tend to do that right thing again and again. So this is a very, very easy and simple child psychology. So if you can remember this particular psychological fact, the child wants to have attention, and if we provide attention, for a right thing, then it will be easy for all of us to ensure that all the rules that we set for the child. So these are the few strategies we need to ensure that we take care while we just deal with our children. But in the preschool years, it is very important to document. Maybe we are aware, we know these things quite well. All of us know this, but as far as the management of the child and the education and skill development is concerned, one important thing is to document things. So to document things, we have to follow it in the diary, planner, or for that matter, Adiveret Kids has got its documentation plans for noting down all these checkpoints which deals with the developmental milestone as well as problematic behavior. So these are the four things. Child neglects when the rules are being talked about. Child is disrespectful. Child is confused when some rule is being talked about. Child is influenced too much by another child. If such things are happening, then we have to take a note and put that as a record in whatever way the records are being maintained for the child, whether it's a file or there may be specific file for specific skill. So in those areas, those skills can be recorded. So how to evaluate? If such kind of checkpoints are not present in the child, we give a score of 0. Rarely the child is doing all these things, we give a score of 1. Sometimes the child is doing or child is displaying all this behavior, we'll just give a score of 2. And if the child is very often doing this kind of behavior, then we give a score of 3. So these things can be, this is a particular checkpoint and we have to check it at least once in every 6 months, just to ensure that this particular problem behavior is absent in our children. If at all this particular problem behavior is present, then at least we have a chance, we have a scope to work on this and reverse this particular behavior and make our child much more effective. And later we'll discuss combining all the things together for the attention problem, how we can arrive to a score which will indicate if the child is absolutely fine as far as the problematic behavior is concerned. So this is one of the important skill, and if we follow this particular mechanism and strategy and document it, I'm sure this will help in a big way to make our child very, very skillful as far as social skill is concerned. So this is all about this particular problematic behavior as far as the following rule is concerned. And you may also refer to Kids Packet article, Our Rule and Your Rule. And we have provided a beautiful article and various plans and strategies how to manage that in a very, very specific way, along with various activities at school or at home. So you can refer that Kids Packet under Parents segment that is there. And this Kids Packet is available in our Adiveret Preschool Learning app. And you can download that app to get access to that. So that's all today as far as this fifth problematic behavior under the attention problem is concerned. And in next session, we'll talk about the next component of attention problem, which deals with when the child is unable to sit still for a longer time. So that's a big problem, and the prevalence rate of this problem is growing day by day due to multiple reasons. And we'll deal with that, how to make sure that our child is absolutely okay as far as the overlappingness is concerned. So thank you very much for your kind attention, and we'll meet you in our next session for that next component of problematic behavior. Until then, thank you very much, and looking forward to talk to you again.